Want to keep up with the latest LEGO Mega 96.1 videos? Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Hello everyone, LEGO Mega 96.1 here with another video. Wow, 3 videos in one day. Stroke of luck, huh? Well, welcome to my another reaction video, and for this reaction video, I'm going to be reacting to Union Soldier Uniform, Equipment, and Weapon done by Devin Underwood. Now, I came across this channel and this video while scrolling around on YouTube on my Xbox, and I sat down and watched the whole video. It's actually really good. Now, I do have some of the equipment for the Civil War soldier, and I kid you not, I usually dress up as a member of the Iron Brigade. Now, this was me at the Colonial Harvest at the Colonial Pennsylvania Plantation, not the Colonial Pennsylvania Plantation, the 1696 Thomas Massey House in Broomall, Pennsylvania. And now, I was there on the third Saturday in October, and I took part in the Colonial Harvest. And yeah, I was 80 plus years ahead of these guys, and yeah, I had a great time, and I took part in demonstration, and so it was a lot of fun. So without further comment from myself, I'm gonna react to Union Soldier Uniform, Equipment, and Weapon done by Devin Underwood. So let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the video.
Morning, everyone. Private Underwood, Company A, 9th Pennsylvania Reserves. Today, I'd like to take a look at some of the uniforms and equipment worn by the Union soldier during the American Civil War.
Now, 9th Pennsylvania Reserves, because that's interesting, because during the Civil War, Pennsylvania had a lot of guys as for the war effort. We also have infantry regiments that were in reserves, hence the reason why we have Pennsylvania Reserve regiments. Now, I've been to Gettysburg before, and I met soldiers of the 1st Pennsylvania Reserves, meaning the National Regiment. I sat down, I went to the camp, talked to one of the guys, and one of them, a real nice guy, I did the manual of arms with his rifle, and he gave me some interesting tips. He was on the way to how to handle a Civil War rifle. Real nice guy.
So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's make history come alive.
And how? Now that's really nice. The shot of the cannon and hit the way the soldier, the way Devin looked with his foundation garments on, posing in front of his tent. It captures the American Civil War. Now that is awesome.
The first thing we're going to take a look at today is the shelter. Now, it might not look like much, but for the soldier on the march, this was home sweet home.
I heard of the shelter house. Now, basically, one soldier would have one half, and the other one would have the other half, and they would usually, sleep in the same tent. But hey, what do? That's your business. Now, interesting fact: when I got a reenacting gear from a former Confederate reenactor, this guy had everything: the uniform, the equipment, the tent, the cot, everything. Now, the tent, it wasn't this, because it was like those big tents that you see at every Civil War reenactment that usually holds 2 members. It was seen in History Channel's Grant. That's what I have.
It's actually made of 2 shelter halves buttoned together. Each soldier would be issued 1 shelter half, and in order to construct the entire shelter, he'd partner up, they would button the halves together, put the stakes in, and there's your place to sleep for the night. The canvas, thankfully, is decently water resistant, so he had a way to keep his gear nice and dry should the rains come.
Nice.
Fortunately, I do not have a partner to crawl into the tent with, so it's just me by my lonesome.
Nothing wrong with that.
Here is where I would sleep, and you can see I'm actually using my knapsack as a makeshift pillow.
I thought about bringing my own pillow, but never had it. I don't have a knapsack, but maybe I'll think about it. Use it as a pillow.
Not the most comfortable, not the most glamorous, but for a soldier on the march, it'll do.
Yep.
Moving inside now, let's have a look at some of the equipment that a soldier on campaign would have carried.
Now, I actually have the musket, the waist belt, the bayonet, the cartridge box, the haversack, again, the canteen, but not the haversack. Not the haversack, the knapsack. I don't have the tarp and even the federal issue blanket. I'll look into it.
Now, a soldier out on campaign had to live off of his back, which meant that if he needed it, he had to carry it. It could get heavy, but everything you see here is essential for comfort and combat effectiveness on campaign.
And how?
Starting out, we have the gum blanket. I consider this to be one of the most essential things that a soldier could carry. Not only is it a ground cloth, it is a rain fly and a raincoat.
That's true, but somehow I've seen soldiers wearing that, but sort of like a rain poncho. And trust me, I was looking at every single Civil War reenacting store or to see if they have of that poncho, but so far nothing's popped up. And knowing me, I don't want to get my forge cap wet. I was looking for a hat cover for my forge cap, but so far nothing popped up. Now, what I was referring to, that officers and soldiers, well, mostly officers, would have these tarred covered for the gum, the hat cover. I don't know what it's called. I'm just going to call it hat cover.
A 3-in-1 deal that a soldier would carry in his pack. Speaking of blankets, we have the federal issue wool blanket. This is what a soldier would wrap himself up in to sleep for the night.
I do not have that. I mean, I thought about using one of my old sleeping bags. Thanks, Fear. That might help as a blanket, or usually grab one of my own, but I'll think about looking for a blanket for me.
Moving over here, we come to the leathers. This is the soldier's belt.
The accoutrements.
This belt, worn around the waist, carried his cap pouch, which held inside it percussion caps. These caps were used to prime the musket, and without these, he couldn't fight.
An interesting fact, that little brass cap has a chemical inside it called fulminated mercury, which is highly explosive on impact. Another aviation over the
He also
flintlock.
held, of course, his bayonet, the soldier's cold steel.
Nice.
Moving over here, we have the cartridge box. This is where a soldier would carry his ammunition for his rifled musket. If we open up the cartridge box, we can see that held within are cartridges. These cartridges hold the gunpowder and the ball that a soldier would use to load and fire his rifled musket.
Nice.
Here is what one of them looks like up close.
Blanks.
The ball, of course, is down here, the powder charge in here, and here is where the soldier would tear the cartridge with his teeth, dump the powder down the barrel, start the ball, use his ramrod to ram it all home, and then he was ready to fire. once he got the cap on.
And another thing, black powder tastes horrible. Don't eat it.
Now this cartridge box has in it 2 tins to hold the cartridges. These are actually multi-level tins. Hidden within the cartridge box, there are actually little more spaces on the bottom to hold extra ammunition. After the soldier had expended all the rounds up here, the order would come to change tins at a lull in the battle.
Now, for a Civil War soldier, for those who don't know, they were issued 60 rounds per man. Yeah, 60 rounds. It's crazy.
He would pull out his tin and move the rounds from the bottom up to the top. And then he would be ready to fire again.
Now, before I go on any further, you know that gold circle there? That's a breastplate. Now, the breastplate is worn on the strap of the cartridge box. Now, if you go to Civil War reenactments or seen Civil War movies, you will see soldiers without their breastplates. Because I've seen a Civil War documentary on the Battle of the Wilderness. One soldier was telling his brother to remove their breastplate because there's a reason why. That's where your heart is, if the breastplate is right in the center. Because, again, that's where your heart is. If the Confederates aim you in the heart, you're dead. Although I did hear some accounts that that a breastplate saved the lives of some soldiers, but then again, it is a rumor.
Coming over here, we have another essential piece of kit. On the march, especially under the hot southern sun, heat stroke and dehydration were very real issues that the soldier faced. So this canteen was imperative. The soldier would fill this with water, and as a bonus, to keep the water cool, he would often soak this wool cover in order to maintain the cool temperature of his water.
I didn't do that. And when I got my canteen, maybe I'll look into it. Maybe I'll try it out. And another thing, I didn't tie this here. I just kind of left my canteen as is. Maybe I'll try it out.
Coming over here, we have the tarred canvas haversack and the tin cup. Within this haversack,
that's what I did for my
was
canteen.
held the rations. A soldier's rations consisted of a few things when he was out on campaign. His salt pork, a form of protein that was very well preserved. Often he would have coffee. Sometimes he would be issued beans and sugar, and whatever else he could scrounge up.
That's what I did. My tin cup would be on the outside. And when I portrayed the soldier. Now, what I have in my haversack, I don't have any of the reenact gear, like the utensils and stuff. I just have a book on Gettysburg and a handkerchief. And when I was at the Massey house, I put my camcorder in there and my tripod, and so that way I could record my my experience at the Colonial Harvest. And yeah, you know that scene for the Colonial Harvest where I was with the flags for the flag dedication. That's all done by my camcorder and my tripod.
Opening the haversack up, let's have a look at what's inside. First thing we have here is a poke sack. This particular one is filled with a coffee ration. There was one thing a soldier on the march loved, it was coffee.
I never had that. Maybe I should try it. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I had Irish coffee, but when I tasted it, it wasn't really good. I mean, no offense to my Irish subscribers out there. Maybe I should try a cup of coffee somewhere down the line.
Nothing like a good cup of coffee in the morning to get up, go, and fight those Rebs.
After having a good old cup of joe.
We also have the soldier's bread, the oft encountered but oft hated hardtack cracker.
I never had that. I never had a hardtack cracker. Maybe I should try it.
Made of little more than baked flour and a bit of salt, it would keep for weeks or even months on end. This is probably one of the worst things that a soldier could eat, but food is food at the end of the day.
Take a bite of your teeth.
That is awful.
Ugh.
Ugh. Ugh. Now, of course,
Never
he
mind.
didn't just live on bread alone. He would also be issued a protein. Usually that was salt pork. Pork soaked in a brine of salt and water so that it would keep on the march. He would have it in a sack much like this. And believe me, in the heat of the southern sun, it would begin to smell.
Ugh. So much for having refrigerators. Oh wait, it was the 1860s. Refrigerators didn't exist back then. But thanks to progress, years later, refrigerators did come around. Although there was such a thing as ice boxes.
Now, of course, soldier has to have something to eat with. And that's where his silverware comes in. The fork usually had 3 tines, as did most forks of the era. He would, of course, have a knife, and often he would have a spoon, but unfortunately for me, during a battle, my spoon fell out and is now somewhere between here and Virginia.
Sorry to hear that. I hope you found a new one. Well, this is something you knew about me. You should always have backups to be on the safe side.
So there's that. Soldier also would carry, often strapped to the outside of his haversack, his tin cup. This cup was another soldier's multi-tool. This wasn't just his cup for drinking water. He could use it to collect water, to put into his canteen, to boil that same water, to boil soup, to boil coffee, to collect things. It was truly a very well-rounded tool. And as long as there was a liquid in it, he could put this tin cup into the fire. Or, often soldiers would put a bale of wire over top the cup so that they could hang it over the fire to avoid direct contact with the flames.
Nice.
Next thing to have a look at is the soldier's knapsack. Now, this knapsack was worn much like the modern backpack we all know and love, but it had a few extra features to make it ideal for a soldier on campaign.
I should try looking for a haversack or a knapsack. Why am I confusing haversack with knapsack? You think they... Oh, I get it, because they have sack at the end. I should get those ID'd better.
Up top, we have the blanket or the coat straps. Depending on whether the soldier carried his blanket within the bag or on the outside, he could roll up either his blanket or greatcoat and use these straps to keep it secured up on top of his knapsack.
What, you couldn't put two on one? You couldn't put 2 things on there? Oh, okay. I think I know why. I think if you put 2 things on there at once, you could it might try to break. So that's the reason why you put one or the other on there. But one of my main concern is, where does your greatcoat go or your overcoat go? Does it go in your knapsack? I mean, I'm just saying, it's a question.
Opening it up, we see that it has 2 separate compartments. Here is where he would keep his shelter half and his blanket if he didn't choose to roll it up on top of his knapsack. These would buckle in, keeping everything nice and secure. Between the 2 bags, he would often put his gum blanket. Out of way, but easy to reach in case the rain started. Now you'll see I here have a cast iron skillet. That's because I like to have something I can use to cook my salt pork rations on the move. Once you've stopped marching for the day and you set up a camp, oftentimes that's your only time to cook. So having something to cook with is always a nice bonus. Now, not every soldier would carry these. Weight was often a consideration, and oftentimes one soldier would have one of these, and he'd pass it around to everyone in the company, and they'd share it. I just happened to be that person.
You were stuck holding that, huh? Hey, nothing wrong with that.
It also happens to be a very handy weapon in case you're out of ammo and the Rebs are storming your camp.
I could probably see somebody open this accounts right now. I can see one Confederate soldier coming in and busy having his teeth. busy having his teeth. The officer would be like, "What the hell happened to you?" He replied, "Some Yankee hit me in the mouth of the frying pan." It's a joke. I do that.
Coming over here, we have the other part of the knapsack, the other bag. Held together by two leather ties, this is where a lot of these soldiers' personal items would have been stored. Let's open it up and have a look. So the first thing we have here, extra ammunition. The soldier carried more ammunition than just what he had in his cartridge box. This particular one, this blue one, is what's known as a cleaning cartridge, and held a special ball within that, when shot out of the rifled musket, would actually help to clear some of the fouling from within the barrel.
Clever. Very clever.
Speaking of the rifled musket, keeping it clean was paramount. A dirty musket cannot fire, and a soldier who cannot shoot is not effective.
Disgraceful.
So here we have patches. These would be put on a worm on the end of the ramrod, run down the barrel to clean it out.
I should try that.
Sometimes, of course, camp life could get a little boring. Anybody who's been in the military knows that it's a lot more waiting than fighting.
Yeah, because technology back then didn't exist. They didn't have phones or computers or anything, even back in the 1860s. The only way to entertain yourself is by reading a book, chatting with friends, playing card games, or anything. You need to keep yourself entertained. True facts.
So to pass the time, a soldier would often carry something simple, like a deck of cards. And yes, gambling was a thing that happened in the army.
Nice. I don't gamble. Word of advice, don't gamble. If you do, you'll be in a heap of trouble. Trust me.
Finally, and I would consider perhaps the most important, we have an extra pair of socks. Keep in mind, this is the era where most of a soldier's movement is done on foot. The average soldier does not ride a horse. That's for the officers and the cavalry.
Let's not forget artillery. Some men travel by artillery, on horses. Some, not all. Some.
And he's not hopping into the wagons because a wagon could only carry a few people, and those were reserved for equipment. Taking care of his feet ensured that a soldier could march for miles upon miles, and when it came time to fight, he could fight just as well as anyone. Especially if it rained, having an extra pair of socks made your life a lot better and helped you avoid things like gangrene.
Always good to come prepared.
And of course, where would a soldier be without his best friend? His rifled musket, the weapon of a soldier in the Civil War. Now, by the 1860s, firearms technology had progressed immensely. Not only do we have the very reliable percussion cap firing mechanism, but we also have, within the barrel of our weapon, rifling. Grooves that, when gripped by the ball, allow that ball to spin. That gives the ball greater speed, greater accuracy, and a greater chance of sending old Johnny Reb all the way back to Virginia.
Or to hell. Me, I send Johnny Reb straight to hell.
This particular rifled musket is the 1861 .58 caliber Springfield rifled musket.
Have it. But think about getting an Enfield and a .42 Springfield, or pretty much any firearm from the Civil War era, or even before the American Civil War. But I doubt my mother would like that.
The rifle that would become synonymous with the Union soldier during the American Civil War.
But let's not forget, the Confederates had the Enfield. The Enfield musket was widely used in the Confederacy and was often found on Union soldiers. You know the 54th Massachusetts, the 1989 film Glory? They were armed with the Enfield rifles. Oh yeah, I kid you not, they were armed with them.
Of course, this was by no means the only firearm that you would see in service with the Union. Many soldiers also carried the Enfield rifle.
Didn't I just talk about that? But let's not forget, they're also armed with the .42 Springfield, the .43 Austrian Lorenz, the .59 Sharps, the .58 Enfield Musketoon, the .41 on Mississippi. Pretty much anything that's to do with a percussion cap.
In the cavalry, you would have various carbines and breech loaders. Even some of the infantry would carry the famous Sharps rifle. In fact, Company A, 9th PA Reserves, early on in their service, would famously carry that Sharps rifle into battle.
That's actually true. And I did say that. And another fact that you didn't know. Some of Berdan's sharpshooters didn't have the Sharps rifle at the beginning. Most of these guys were armed with the Hall breech-loading rifles and even the 1855 Colt revolving rifle. Now, it's a rifle that has a Colt revolving cylinder or near the back of the breech. It was a true gun. Look it up.
And there were, of course, others, far too numerous to mention here. But by and large, when you think
I had to save the trouble doing
Union
it.
soldier, you think the 1861 Springfield rifled musket. Let's take a minute now to talk about soldier's uniform. What I'm wearing right now is, by and large, what you would see a soldier in the Union Army wearing right about the middle, all the way up through the end of the war. We'll start inside and we'll work our way out. The first thing we got to talk about is your underwear as a soldier. That's right, soldiers in the Civil War had a very, very complex set of underwear. Came in 3 pieces: your shirt, your drawers, and your socks.
I wear a regular t-shirt underneath my my outfit, and I just wear regular boxers when I dress up as a soldier from the Civil War.
Roll up my pant legs so we can have a look here. All the
Dude,
folks
hey.
minds right about now. But here you can see are my flannel drawers, my long johns. And yes, even in the heat of the Virginia sun, a Union soldier would be expected to wear his drawers.
I wear regular underwear. And as for the socks, I wear regular socks.
Over the drawers, on his feet, he would have his socks. These are wool socks. They come up to right about mid-calf height. Some soldiers would have them up to the knee. These will keep your feet comfortable, dry, and warm. Rolling up the sleeve on my fatigue blouse, you can see that we have the shirt. Now, the shirt that I'm wearing today is a linen one.
I have a muslin shirt on. It's a bleach white or an off-white. I also have an orange and black flannel shirt that I have.
which isn't necessarily the most historically accurate, but unfortunately, my other one currently stinks to high heaven after a wonderful weekend at the 160th Wilderness, so this is what I'm wearing today. The shirt that I would normally wear, though, is made of wool, and that would have been the standard issue shirt that most federal soldiers would have worn. That's right, no cotton undershirts here. Cotton was down south, and the South was in rebellion. So the Union soldier would wear, under his coat, a wool shirt. Moving now to the outer layers, we come to the trousers. These are made of sky blue wool, and these were the standard issue trousers issued to federal soldiers.
Some of the soldiers wore a dark blue trousers as well, the navy blue. How do I know this? Well, I did see something that soldiers at the first major battle of the American Civil War wore navy blue trousers. Some of these guys with the regular army, regular infantry, as it were.
These are very basic, very simple, and yes, 100% wool. I'll unbutton my coat a little, and you'll see that these are held up by a pair of suspenders.
Or braces, as they're commonly known.
That's right, no belt loops. In the 1860s, belt loops on pants just weren't a thing, really.
I did see some soldiers wore a belt around their pants. That way they would keep their drawers from falling down.
So soldier and civilian alike would hold up his trousers with a trusty pair of suspenders. Moving up top to my coat, I'm wearing the Federal Fatigue Blouse, otherwise known as the sack coat. Now this is by no means the only coat that soldiers in the Union military would have worn. There were a variety of coats that you could see on a soldier, especially early on in the war, when state arsenals were still clearing out their warehouses.
That's actually true. Well, I'm a subscriber to Civil War Digital Digest, and they covered various units of North and South. One of them that I saw, they did something on the 2nd Wisconsin. The 2nd Wisconsin, they wore gray uniforms with a black trim. And their caps were different too. They were styled after the shako. Now this was before the kepi. Interesting fact. And another fact, the 7th New York State Militia wore gray uniforms with white belts and black piping on their sleeves, their collars, their coats, their pants, even their kepi. He has piping, black piping to be more precise.
Some states had their own specific jackets. Most notably, New York had a very distinct style of jacket.
Didn't I just talk about that? Well, I talked about the 7th, but not the every single New York regiment who wore the that style of jacket.
Soldiers would wear the tailored, dressy frock coat as their choice for combat.
I have the frock coat as well. I also have the shell coat, or a roundabout as it's called, and the sack coat.
Some soldiers very early on would move to the sack coat, and still others, such as the Zouave units, would have some very distinctive, brightly trimmed, very flashy uniforms.
That's actually true. Now, the reason why they were called Zouaves because they were inspired by the French-style soldiers in Europe. In fact, some of the styles actually came to the United States, and they formed various units while wearing the Zouave-style uniforms. There were soldiers from New York and Pennsylvania who wore that style of outfits. The 114th Pennsylvania, the 5th in New York, and even 165th New York. And even 140th New York. And I gotta say, New York has a lot of Zouave regiments. I mean, Come to think of it, I think about seeing myself as a zouave. I mean, could you imagine me in my zouave attire? I imagine I get a lot of ladies, and they always say they love a man in uniform or guy, whatever your preference is.
But the sack coat by and large became synonymous with the Union fighting man for a couple of reasons. The frock coat, the dress coat, which was sometimes worn in combat, was found to be lacking in its utility. Despite providing a very squared away, soldierly appearance, it restricted the movement of the soldier's body, and it was a bit more weight than he felt comfortable carrying.
Yikes.
So very early on, some units switched to the sack coat as their go-to combat garment. And it was perfectly for it. This was originally your work blouse, your fatigue blouse that you would wear out on fatigue working duty.
Well, that's true. And for the frock coat, it's more of a dress style outfit. Hence the reason why you see soldiers dress up posing for their portraits, and they would even wear the frock coat on dress parades. Some of the soldiers would have shoulder scales. Now, the shoulder scale was different. If you're a private, it's just a regular soldier scale. If you're an NCO, like a corporal or even all the sergeants, the soldier scales tend to differ. Officers, it's just epaulets.
A loose cut, room to breathe, room to move, no restriction of movement. It's no surprise that this very quickly became a favored garment for combat. Up top, we have not the kepi, the forage cap.
I have the kepi.
I'll take it off here. That's right, this is a forage cap.
I have one. Right here.
The kepis were usually for your officers, or if you were one of the soldiers in the army lucky enough to have a good bit of money, you might private purchase a kepi.
Well, some soldiers not only privately purchased kepis, they also were issued kepis as well. In fact, they were also issued slouch hats. There were even the Hardy hat. Now, the Hardy hat was named after William Hardy, and that hat was made famous by the Iron Brigade. Men from Wisconsin, Indiana, and even Michigan.
But by and large, soldiers in the Union Army would wear the forage cap. Now, the forage cap is actually a descendant of the military shako, a high-crowned military cap that some units would actually continue to wear throughout the war. However, for our unit, there is no stiffener in this forage cap.
I think mine's a stiffer.
It doesn't have the squared away appearance of the kepi or the shako, but it's a very simple, practical design that would have proudly sat atop the heads of many a soldier marching his way through Georgia.
Or Virginia.
The border is also unbound. On your kepis and your more expensive privately purchased forage caps, you would often see binding around the brim. That would keep it from cracking and from tearing as it was exposed to the elements. But for the average soldier, no binding on the brim. Up top, you'll see that it has markings on it. This is my hat brass. Now, whether or not a soldier had brass on his hat was often up to his commanding officer or up to his personal preferences.
That's actually true. Well, for me, when I have the forge cap, I put the infantry bugle on here. I thought about putting a corps badge or even regimental number or company here, or to make it more representative of the Union, but I haven't got a chance to do that yet. Now, what I mean by is your corps badge, it means the branch, the corps to which you belong to. Now, the Corps badges tend to differ in color. Like, for example, the first division would be red, the second is white, third is blue. Red, white, and blue, like the flag.
For the infantry, the go-to was the hunting horn. If you see a forage cap with crossed rifles or a kepi with crossed rifles, those didn't come out until after the Civil War.
Yes, post-Civil War era. Like all the way to the 20th century. Yep, that's actually true. The guns cross, ones for the infantry, didn't come later until post-Civil War America.
So during the Civil War, the go-to infantry marker was the horn. Up here we have the 9.
But let's not forget, there's also Sabres Cross, that's the cavalry. Cannons Cross is artillery.
Infantry marker was the horn. Up here we have the 9 for 9th Pennsylvania. Some folks would have their company letter often in the center of the horn. For us, that would be A for Company A. And still others would have nothing at all. The plain federal forage cap.
Well, what I saw, I think this is just my thing. Like the soldier for their cap, they would have their Corps badge right on. They would have their Corps badge right here, the regimental number or the branch of service in the army, and their letter here. At least that's what I saw. Or very least, soldiers would wear their Corps badges on their coats as well. Oh, I kid you not, they actually do that.
One little extra thing that I have tucked up in my cap is a little hard to see, so I'll come closer to the camera here. The pick. Might not look like much, but this is an essential piece of kit. As you fire your rifled musket, powder fouling builds up, especially in your cone. And if too much builds up, the spark won't get through to ignite your powder charge. So a soldier would use this to wiggle it in there, clean out the fouling, and be once again ready to fire his rifled musket.
I should look into that.
Access, I keep this actually tucked right up top in my forage cap. I keep it right where my hand would go, so that if my weapon misfires in combat and I need to get to it quickly, all I need to do, reach up, grab it, do what I need to do, and return it to where it sat. On my feet, we have the brogans. Rough out, leather shoes, dyed black.
I have that, and I don't have the metal plates for my brogans. Yeah, I went to a Civil War reenactment at the Colonial Pennsylvania homestead. I was trying to go uphill, but somehow I got stuck. So I climbed down and took up the dirt trail. Note to self: look for leather brogans and for metal plates for your shoes.
They are definitely not the most comfortable thing in the world, and unfortunately for many Union soldiers, they were not the most durable thing in the world. Oftentimes, after many, many miles of marching, sometimes these would simply disintegrate.
Some soldiers wore boots. Not only the cavalry wore boots, but the army wore boots as well. The infantry wore boots.
But these are important. Again, we are marching day in and day out. We're not riding horses. We're not riding wagons unless we're injured or we're riding with the supplies. So these are essential to keep nice, to keep clean, and to keep in good condition to make sure that we can march into combat and fight effectively. So that's roughly the uniform of the Union soldier. A very basic, general description, but what you would most likely see roughly about the mid to late war if you came across a Union infantry. All right, so we've shown you the gear, we've shown you what's in it. Now, let's get ready for battle.
And how?
Rebs are coming, we've got to fight them off, So let's gear up. Now, how the gear was put on was determined by a couple of things. There were, of course, regulations for best practice on how to wear it, and then there was a soldier's personal preference. So what I'm going to show you is how I put my gear on so that I have ease of access to everything I need while in the fight or on the march. First thing I put on is my haversack, full of my rations, my silverware, and my tin cup.
Well, for me, I put my cartridge box on first, then my haversack.
Over top of that,
But hey, whatever your preference is, do what you do.
I put my cartridge box. And I make sure that the cartridge box sits right here on my hip. A very natural position for my hand to go to get my ammunition for when I need to fire my weapon.
For my cartridge box, I have the U.S. box plate on it. I also saw a breastplate that has the Pennsylvania Home Guard on it. Maybe I should get that next time.
Now, to make sure none of this goes flopping around, up next, I put on my belt. Of course, remember the belt contains my bayonet and a cap pouch. It goes right here, around the waist, hooks in like so, and I bring my cap pouch here to the front. Once again, ease of access. My bayonet hangs down at the side so that when the time comes to draw it, it's right where I need it to be. Over top of all this will go my canteen. Now, I don't want my canteen held down by my belt, because during battle or on the march, if I need to hydrate, I want to be able to access it. So it hangs here, right about at the small of my back.
I don't have it in my canteen tied down the way this guy did, and I just have it hung down all the way to my haversack. Maybe I should try that.
Ease of access for drinking my water, but held in tight enough that it doesn't jiggle around and cause discomfort while I'm on the march. Of course, last thing I grab for battle is my rifled musket. Ready to go, ready to fight old Johnny Reb, ready to preserve the Union.
And to end
You
slavery.
might be wondering, why didn't I put on the knapsack? There's a very specific reason for that, and that is that most soldiers did not wear their knapsack into battle if they could help it.
That's actually true. I've seen a Civil War documentary, and this was in 1864. Some soldiers were in battle, and I think this was Missionary Ridge. Some soldiers went into battle, and they wore their haversacks. And when they were in combat, they found it difficult to maneuver and get their ammunition, and with their knapsacks on their backs. So instead of continuing with the fight, they got out of there with their lives.
In fact, there are many records of Union soldiers before battle discarding their knapsack by the roadside, either to pick it up later or to never see it again.
Well, that's one way of getting rid of your stuff.
So going into battle, very rarely do I wear the knapsack unless I know that I'm going to need something in it in the heat of battle. So there you have it. The Union soldier, geared up, ready to fight. So now that we're all geared up for combat, let's discuss how a soldier in the Union Army would fight in the field of battle. Of course, his principal weapon here was his rifled musket. And to understand how he used that rifled musket, we need to discuss drill. drill was a constant part of a soldier's life in the Union Army. He would drill and drill and drill again until his movements with this rifled musket were habit. He could move through them without even thinking.
That's actually true. And this serves as a reminder. At the first major battle of the American Civil War, or Bull Run, and many of these guys were half-trained. Most of these guys were militia units. They didn't have any proper training. After the Battle of Bull Run, soldiers were drilled constantly, day in and day out, no matter what the weather. And so that way you can better understand how to handle the musket and what to do well under fire, and so on and so forth.
For combat, the most important drill he would learn is something called loading in 9 times. A set of 9 counts that would ensure that he could load his rifled musket in an efficient and organized manner, even in the heat of the most intense combat. So let's take a look at loading in 9 times. The soldier would start from the position of shoulder arms. From here, he would get the command to load. He brings the rifle between his feet.
Well, it depends on what Civil War manual you read. If it's Hardy's or Casey's or Gillham's, the manuals tend to differ.
And goes to his cartridge box. He would take the cartridge from the box, put it to his teeth. He tears the cartridge.
I saw something on Gettysburg when they did the loading and musket. The handle cartridge thing would be the second in command, and after load. How do I know this? Because I've seen that video. When the command load is given, a soldier would handle cartridge, would take the cartridge out from its cartridge box and place the end of it between his teeth. And that's actually true. Well, whatever Civil War manual you follow, be sure you always stick to it.
Spits the paper, puts it to the edge of his muzzle. He charges the cartridge.
Well, the charge cartridge would be the next thing. Handle cartridge, tear cartridge, charge cartridge would be next. Is pouring the powder down pouring the powder down the barrel.
Putting the powder down the barrel and starting the ball. He draws his ramrod, putting it in the barrel, he rams the ball home. Removing the rammer, he brings it back, and here's the important part. He returns the ramrod with his pinky. The idea is to keep his other fingers away from the muzzle of his rifle should any of that powder charge go off.
That's actually true. And another reason why you have to return the ramrod, because during the battle, it's a pain in the backside to get that ramrod back to where it originated from the barrel of the gun. And the thing is, without your ramrod, you can't reload your musket. I mean, you can't just call a timeout during a battle and be like, "Excuse me, guys. Thanks, thank you." And another reason why, if that ramrod is still in the barrel, if you fired it, that thing would fly out with a dismal twang, and that thing could shish kebab 2 or 3 guys. And how do I know this? Because I've seen the movie Gods and Generals. Colonel Adalbert Ames, who was the previous colonel of the 20th Maine, talked to Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, who was lieutenant colonel at the time of the fight, was lieutenant colonel at the time of the war. He demonstrated the soldier's handling of a musket, and he saw that that soldier forgetting to remove his ramrod from the barrel. So you always got to remember to return the rammer. And another reason, if when you're in battle, soldiers would tend to stick their ramrods in the ground and continue loading. So that way it would help them reload the weapon and much faster.
And send a stray musket ball flying up into the air. By sending the rammer home with the pinky, he ensures that his other fingers stay nice and safe. The next command he gets is to prime. He brings the rifle up, right on top of his cap pouch. He half-cocks the hammer, reaches into his cap pouch, takes a cap, puts it on the cone. From here, he returns to shouldered arms. His musket is now loaded and ready to fire. He gets the command, ready. Full cocks. Aim. He aims his rifle and fire. Bang.
Oh! You got me, partner. Sorry, couldn't resist. The joke was right there. It's from the movie called The Mask. If you haven't seen it, check it. It's really good.
He fires the rifle. Recover arms. He brings it back to the ready position, and depending on the orders, he can either go back to shoulder arms, he can load again, or whatever his commanding officer wishes him to do. But let's say things are getting hairy. Let's say that bullets, or minute balls rather, just aren't enough. The soldier would get the order, fix bayonet. Rifle comes to the center, grabs it, takes the bayonet with the left hand, straight up and around, puts it over, slides it down, locks it in place.
The socket bayonet. I know why that's called the socket bayonet, because if you look at the photos of the bayonet from various wars up until, say, 1860s, 1870s, or even 1880s even, muskets would have this, or even rifles would have this thing would help secure the bayonet. Hence the reason why we got the socket bayonet.
Back to shouldered arms. Now, the soldier is ready to give him the cold steel. With this bayonet affixed, his firearm has become a very effective pole arm, and he's ready to send the Rebs packing. So, now that the battle's been won, it's time to hit the road again. And that means it's time to gear up to march. Now, like I said earlier, as a soldier on campaign, you need to live off your back.
I mean, that looks great and all, but what I saw, soldiers would have their canteens over their knapsacks. But whatever your preference is you stick to it.
Everything you're taking with you, you carry. So as you can see, the tent is gone. That's because it is rolled up, folded up, and tucked away inside the knapsack. You'll also notice that up on the top of the knapsack, I've rolled my blanket and my tent poles. All of my other goods tucked up away in the inner bag, and we are almost ready to go. But since it does look like rain, let's take an extra step and protect ourselves from the weather.
Clever.
And we do that, of course, with the gum blanket.
So much for finding... But there's also a poncho as well. I should know because I looked up and soldiers would have ponchos. And they would have the this hook that would be attached to their cartridge box. Not cartridge box, cap pouch. I know what I saw. Oh.
And
Almost.
this looked a lot more elegant in my head. We wrap it around ourselves, And now we are ready to march along down the road, whatever Mother Nature throws at us.
And let's not forget that you have to keep your musket in a secure arms position. What I mean by secure arms is you have to keep your barrel out of the rain. Now, I know you're thinking percussion caps will fire in the rain, and yes, that is another aviation over the flintlocks. Now, for secure arms, a soldier would take his rifle, cast it about, bring it up here, and bring it down to here. So that way, it'll keep the barrel out of the rain.
Protected from the wind and rain, everything we need, packed up in our packs, and we're ready to go marching on to Richmond. Well,
Huzzah!
there you have it. The uniforms, weapon, and equipment of a Union soldier during the American Civil War. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you learned something from it.
Sure did.
If any of this interested you at all, then I encourage you to further your own research. Check out your local library, check out your local bookstore, ask your history teachers, and even better yet, go out and see a reenactment.
I have done that. In September, a couple of years ago, I've been to a Civil War reenactment at the Colonial Pennsylvania homestead. And yes, throughout the video, I was cheering on the federal troops. I was saying, kill the rebs, shoot the rebs. I was energetic. I mean, I was a young adult at the time, and I didn't know what I was thinking.
Or join a reenactment unit yourself. There's all kinds of fun ways to learn more about history and to see it come to life. Until next time, Devin Underwood, Company A, 9th Pennsylvania Reserves.
Thank you, Devin. That's a really good video. And Devin, if you're watching this, you did an awesome job on the video, bud. And I did a video on my uniforms and equipment myself, and I've also did a video of my time at the Colonial Pennsylvania Harvest and my first time at a Civil War reenactment. If you want to see that, I'll put a link in the description below so you can see it for yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And that concludes today's video. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like this, including many other videos that I've done on my channel, please feel free to leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel, and turn on the bell notification so that way you can be notified when I upload the next video. And as always, this is LEGO Mega 96-1 signing off.